Something is changing, not on the surface, not in the tools, but in the way we think. And it's happening quietly. Most people don't notice it because it doesn't feel like a revolution. It feels like a conversation. You ask something, you get an answer. You refine, you go deeper. And over time, something shifts. Your thinking starts to evolve, not because you decide to change it, but because the way you think is now being shaped by the interaction itself. I'm Elamin, and here we explore the AI economy. Not through hype, not through fear, but through what is actually changing. And today I want to explore something deeper than tools or automation. I want to explore how AI is rewiring how we think. Because if that is true, then everything built on human thinking starts to change. The economy, markets, decisions, behavior, all of it. Now, before AI, thinking had limits. You had a question, you had to go find the answer. You had to search, read, compare, interpret. It took effort, it took time. So most people didn't go very far. They stopped early. They relied on what was available, on what was easy, on what others were saying. Thinking was slow, fragmented, and often guided by external sources. Now, something is different. You don't just search anymore, you interact, you ask a question, you get an answer. But you don't stop there. You ask again, you refine, you challenge, you explore different angles. Thinking becomes continuous, it becomes a loop. Instead of one question and one answer, it becomes an ongoing process. And that changes everything. But the real shift is not speed, it's reflection. AI doesn't just give you information, it reflects your thinking back to you. You start noticing things, gaps in your logic, assumption you didn't realize you had, contradictions, think that didn't make sense before. And once you see them, you can unsee them anymore. At this point, something important happens. You start thinking about your thinking. You become more aware, not just of the answers, not of how you got there. And that's very different experience because now you are not just consuming information, you are actively shaping your reasoning. But here's the contradiction. This same system can make you better at thinking or worse. It depends on how you use it. You can engage, question, challenge, or you can accept everything, copy, move on, let it think for you basically. So there are two paths, one where your thinking becomes sharper and one where it becomes weaker. And both are happening at the same time. If you stay engaged, something else happens. Your thinking accelerates, you go through ideas faster, you compare perspective faster, you test assumptions faster. What used to take hours now takes probably minutes. And because it's faster, you do it more often. You basically iterate again and again. And that creates a new pattern. You are no longer thinking in a straight line, you are thinking in cycles. Then something deeper starts to shift your beliefs, things you were sure about that, start to feel less certain. Not because someone told you they were wrong, but because you explored them from a different angles. You saw alternatives, you tested ideas, and slowly but surely, certainty becomes temporary. This is where rewiring really happens. Not in what you know, but in how you process things. Before you would accept, now you question. Before you will, follow, now you analyze. Before you will rely on others. Now you rely more on your own reasoning, with support, obviously, when it comes to AI, but still your own. And then thinking changes basically. Behavior changes. You make decisions faster, you switch directions faster, you adapt more easily. You don't stay stuck in the same patterns. You move on. And when millions, yes, millions of people start doing that, the system around them start to change too. This is where it becomes economic because the economy is not just numbers, it's decisions, it's human behavior, it's how people choose. If people think more independently, they rely less on authority, they question more, they compare more. So industries built on influence start to weaken. At the same time, people become more autonomous. They don't wait for validation. They don't follow blindly. They decide and they act. Markets becomes more dynamic, less predictable, more fluid. Another shift appears. A lot of roles today exist to interpret information, to simplify, to guide decisions. But if individuals can do that themselves with AI, obviously, those layers shrink, not disappear, but compresses. And everything starts to move faster. Learning is faster, decisions are faster, adaptation is faster. So the entire economy accelerates. Companies rise faster, but yeah, they also fall faster. Trends appear and disappear quickly. Everything becomes more fluid. But again, not everyone will experience this the same way. Some people will use AI to think better, to grow, to evolve. Others, well, will use it passively and rely on it. So we get a new divide, not just economic, but cognitive. The real advantage becomes clear thinking, not access to tools. I mean, everyone has access at this point, but how you use them, how you ask, how you challenge, how you decide, that becomes the difference. So, what is really happening? AI is not just changing what we do, it is changing how we think. And when thinking changes, everything built on it changes. We are entering a world where thinking itself is augmented, where reasoning is supported, where reflection is constant. And the biggest shift is not in the technology, it's in the human. And the real question is not what AI will do. The real question is how you will think, because that will define everything else. If this got you thinking, please drop a comment. I read everything. Thanks for watching, and I will see you in the next one.